Hello, it's your boy. Uh, I'm a Melee Kirby, and I wanted to jump in right here at the start of this episode, because well, it's kind of a long story, right? So obviously, elephant in the room. In this big gap between, uh, episodes, it's been close to a year since the last episode went up, or like 10 months, something like that. In that large gap, the Nintendo Direct from a few weeks ago, or at this point, it's only been like 2 weeks. It happened, and during that Direct, of course, we got the announcement for Fire Emblem 17, presumably. I mean, we don't know a ton about it. It seems like it's a main series game, although it does also seem like it's taken a lot of inspiration from Heroes. But I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about that right now, because if you can believe it, I actually got the kickback to do these episodes again. I bought a new microphone. I did a whole bunch of stuff. That's why you're gonna hear me talking right now. It's gonna sound different from the me you're about to hear because I recorded this episode before I bought the microphone. So I did a whole bunch of stuff, and I actually recorded 3 whole episodes in bulk. I did most of the editing on 2 of them, and it started editing the third one when that direct happened. It had to take place just before this announcement had to be made, just as I was about to finally get back on the horse. But it is what it is. So the point I'm trying to make here is that I'm not talking about Fire Emblem Engage in any of these episodes because they were all already recorded when that announcement was made. I will be talking about it in the next episode, which should hopefully not be too far away. My goal, and I'm gonna say this, I don't like making big goals because I'm not always able to live up to them in terms of this podcast. But my goal is to have all of Thracia done by the 2 year anniversary of this podcast, which is a little bit misleading because basically I've only been doing this for 1 year because I took almost an entire year off. But basically, yeah, that's my goal. So that's maybe not on exactly the 2 year anniversary, but like roughly around there, which would be early to mid December. And I have 5 episodes of Thracia left after the 3 that I'm uploading right now. So, yes. My point is, hopefully, I'll get Thracia done in that time frame. But even if I don't, the next episode should be out pretty soon. And in that episode, I will talk about Fire Emblem Engage, which is I have a lot to say about it. So I'm looking forward to that. But just wanted to let you guys know so that you wouldn't expect anything about that in these episodes, despite them coming out after the announcement was made. So, yeah, enjoy the rest of the episode. Sorry for the lower quality. The next 2 episodes after this one should have a much improved microphone quality with less peaking and stuff like that. So, I'm happy with that. But in the meantime, subject yourself to my screeching voice, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye bye. Hello and welcome to Melee's Turnwheel, the series that takes a retroactive look at the Fire Emblem series chapter by chapter. I'm your host, I'm in Melee Kirby, and today we're taking it back to chapters 10, 11, and 11X of Fire Emblem Thracia 776. Holy shit. Um, so it's been a while. Let's see. Well, I mean, I'm not going to try to, make a whole bunch of excuses for it, really. It's just lack of motivation combined with being very busy, combined with, wanting to spend my free time that I have on other stuff. It's been a lot. There's been a lot getting in the way of this. But I've gotten the kickback, hopefully, if I can maintain it. I actually did record most of an episode. I think I got the whole thing done, or at least like 90% of it. I think I was in the editing phase. I got it done, and then I just somehow completely lost the whole thing. So yeah, that was in I believe I was recording that actually on New Year's Day, so that was about 2.5 months
since the previous one, which is a long time. That's a pretty solid gap. Um, but obviously nothing on what I have right now, which is at the time I'm recording this, about 8.5 months, give or take, since the last episode. So I don't know if I'm gonna put this out right away or if I'm gonna wait and then do a bunch of them in bulk. Um, I guess you'll see if this episode goes out late June, then you'll know that that's because that's when I'm recording it. So you'll know if it goes out a few weeks after that or like a month after that, there could very well be more episodes on the way. There's just been so much going on. I'm pretty sure. I mean, we'll talk more about this at the end, but it just crazy. Since the last episode, I believe they announced three hopes, the Warrior FU Warriors 2, and then it just came like at the time I'm recording this, it has just come out. I think either yesterday or the day before the full game. So yeah, I mean it's been quite a while. I haven't played it yet, but yeah. So I mean, I guess I'll just cut the bullshit, I guess, and talk about. Sorry, it's been so long since I've done this. I'm out of the rhythm, of how I usually do these. I'm pretty sure that this is kind of just like a little brief warm up introduction section, and then I do the news and other stuff that's been going on at the end. That's going to be a long section, probably. Oh, and then one last thing before we start, I'm in an apartment now. Since recording the last episode, I have moved from my college dorm to an apartment, and it is a million billion degrees in this apartment because I am on the third floor. It's summer, and I'm not allowed to have window AC. Although I probably could spring for like a floor AC unit or something like that. But as of right now, I have the thermostat right behind me. It is 89 degrees in my apartment. So I have all of the windows open and there are multiple fans on. So if you hear background noise, I will do my best to. I tested it out a little bit. It doesn't seem like regular cars will do it, but there are sometimes police sirens. There might be like a truck or a motorcycle or something that goes by. I'll try my best not to talk and to edit around the background noise, but no promises because sound editing is not my forte. Neither is playing Fire Emblem for that matter. So I don't really know what my forte in this whole ordeal really is. Um, but yeah, enough of the bullshit. Let's just get straight into the episode. Now, I have played these chapters a long, long time ago. I actually considered going back and replaying them, but I was lazy and I didn't want to do that, especially considering this is my least favorite game. I really don't want to play any more Thracia than I have to. The fact that it is Thracia didn't really have anything to do with it. Actually, I didn't really have the actual sitting down and playing the game. Even though this is my least favorite, wasn't really the problem. It was just actually finding the time and the motivation to sit down and record. But I hesitate to say I'm having fun with Thracia. I think it's just like I really like Fire Emblem, and even my least favorite Fire Emblem game is going to be fun to me to a certain extent. Um, but it could be worse. It's not. I'm not dreading playing the game when I sit down to do so. So that's good, I guess. As I said at the beginning, we have three chapters to talk about today: 10, 11, and 11X. So let's go ahead and get started with chapter 10, which is called Knoll Valley. So I have the notes. I wrote these notes as I was playing the chapters. So it's going to be very fun trying to decipher and remember what I meant by all of these things because most of the time they're just like bullet point notes. So I don't really have like a detailed script on what I was going to say. It's mostly off the cuff. So it may bear with me. It's not really, I mean, you guys won't know if I'm right or wrong, so I guess it doesn't really matter. So let's just get right into it. So the opening narration text crawl talks about how these separate entities, the Fianna Freeblades, which were the group that Avel was in charge of and ran with, The Leinster nobility, so like Duke Dorius, Selfina, Carrion, all these guys, and the Magi, the freedom fighters from Manster, Asvel, Machia, Brighton, these guys. They've all kind of come together and formed what is kind of being collectively known as the Liberation Army. I don't recall if it specifies like, is that what they're calling themselves? Is that what the populace is calling them, or is it just the game trying to like clarify like these three separate factions are now working together? I don't really know, but that's the game is making the distinction now that they're not just separate groups anymore. They're now going to be referred to collectively as the Liberation Army. Now, I believe this is yes. Now that they've helped out Duke Dorius. Was their original plan. As they were going through Dagdar's mountains, their original plan was to go to Tara and break the siege there. They took a little bit of a detour to both save Dagdar and also to help out Duke Dorius. But now that that's done with, they're back on track for their original plan, which is to stop. Drop my phone. To stop the siege of Tara, and they're on their way to do that. In order to get there, they need to pass through a place called Noel Valley, which is a very well fortified natural barrier to invaders. So it's going to be a tough. It's going to be a tough one. Absolutely. We're introduced to two new characters here, Olwen and Fred, who are. I'm trying to remember how. I could just go back and look at the script. I probably should. Um, I'll do it afterwards, and if I need to change anything, I'll do it in post. But I'm just trying to remember how much the game actually tells us about them. What we know is that Olwen is Reinhardt's sister, I believe. If we don't figure that out now, we figure it out next episode or next chapter. It's in this episode either way, so it doesn't really matter. Um, Olwen is Reinhardt's sister. Who's Reinhardt? Reinhardt is a member of. I believe he's come up before. He is a knight of House Frege, which is a territory allied with the Empire. It's where Teal'c's from. It's where Ishtar is from. Those guys. Reinhardt is a knight. I think he's like the top head honcho knight of House Frege, and Olwen is his sister. So they have been Olwen and Fred is her like attendant, I think. Um, they have been assigned to scout out this area and to like do like a status check on what's going on in the area. Um, it's mentioned that there's a character named Kempf, who I believe this is our first time hearing about, and he has it out for Olwen. The reason being that he's very jealous of Reinhardt. Reinhardt's like this big dick Chad who like is really cool and gets all the cool shit, and everyone loves him. And Kempf is jealous of him and doesn't want him to have that attention. But he can't really stand up to Reinhardt himself because, well, A, Reinhardt is his superior, and also Reinhardt would kick his ass in a fight, probably. So instead, he has to take his anger out on Olwen, who is his subordinate, I believe. There's a little bit of a gag here where Olwen's like, I don't think Reinhardt sees like she's trying to figure out why Kempf would do this, and she's like, I don't think Reinhardt sees Kempf as a rival at all. It's kind of ridiculous. And whoever she's talking to, it's like the commander of this fortress here in the valley, says that that's probably making it worse, because he doesn't, Reinhardt doesn't respect him as like a true rival. Olwen doesn't really get it, and the guy calls her naive, which is fair. It's kind of weird that she can't understand that logic, but I guess maybe she's a little sheltered. And that's mostly it. I mean, the setup here is pretty straightforward. We gotta get from point A to point B. In order to get through there in the shortest amount of time, in order to break the siege before it's too late, we do need to pass through the valley. Now, the setup for this map is pretty interesting. And by interesting, I mean really, really fucking annoying. Is it the first map to introduce Ballista? Yeah, it is. Not in the series. I believe that they were in the first couple of games. Like I think they're in 1 and 3, and then they were definitely in genealogy. So we've seen Ballista before, but I believe this is the first time seeing them in this game. Now, if you don't recall, Ballista are long range archery basically. They're um bows and arrows basically. They're like the medieval equivalent of like cannons before like gunpowder was readily available, I guess. Um they're big crossbows that shoot bolts across long distances. They usually in most games they act. I don't know if they. I'm pretty sure in every game actually they act the same as regular bows and arrows, which is to say that flying enemies are weak to them. So Pegasi, we don't have a wyvern yet, but wyverns are weak to them as well. Now this is a relatively small map, which is kind of a problem because there's like a shitload of ballista. There's actually even a guy with like a bolting tome. So the whole gimmick of this map, I guess if you want to call it that, is enemies firing at you from multiple areas across the map at long range. The ballista are actually pretty easy to take out. In fact, if you're able to hold off on killing them, you don't need to take them out immediately. They're pretty good training fodder for your weaker guys, the four new recruits that you just got. If you feel like training any of them up, I don't remember. It's been so long. I don't remember who I'm actively trying to use. I don't think I'm using any of the scrub squad. Um, Kane, Alba, and Robert. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty much benching those guys immediately. I have used them in the past, and they can be pretty fun. Um, but not this time. I think I'm training Selfina if I'm not mistaken. So she's not that bad. She's like okay. She gets the brave bow, although she can give that to someone else, so that's not really a big thing for her. But unlike the other brave weapons, there's not really a whole lot of competition for it, right? It's like, who are you gonna give it to? Like Ronan, Tanya, who there's none of these really matter. I guess Xavier can use bows later, but we don't get him for a while anyway. Oh yeah, I'm doing full recruit, so Xavier is gonna be real fun. Oh man, I'm not looking forward to that. Another time, another place. But for now, yeah, so just keep that in mind. There's long distance attackers coming at you from multiple directions. There are some thieves that encourage you to hurry up. It's a little. I mean, I like this generally. It's a little annoying here, but it's encouraging you. Basically, it's like you need to push forward in order to stop the thieves before they get to the houses that they're going to destroy. But if you go too fast and you overextend, it's very easy to overextend in this map because the ballista, while they aren't very strong like defensively, they're very slow, so it's easy to double them, and they don't have a lot of defense. It's they do hit pretty hard. At least some of them do. I think the stat variance on them makes it kind of they can do only a little damage or they can do a lot of damage. But basically, it's you might think you're only in range of two, but it's actually very easy to miss one and actually get hit by three, and then it's like whole thing, and it's really annoying. But it's it is what it is. We have to be pretty strict from my experience with this map anyway. Maybe I'm just bad, but in my experience, you do actually have to be pretty tight with the speed of it because otherwise the thieves will get to the houses. They get to them pretty early, and you can't really do because you can't catch up to them really with your flyers because they're just gonna get super destroyed by the ballista. Um, so you kind of gotta be quick about it because otherwise, like your foot units aren't gonna be able to get there with very much time to spare. Is my point. It's an okay map. It's mostly fine. I don't really have any serious problems with it. Actually, no, that's not true. I'm looking further in my notes and I remembered something about this map that I really, really, really fucking hate. But it's not. We'll get there in a second. Now, a few. I don't remember if it's distance based or turn based, but Olwen joins in at some point actually. And she's okay. She's not very strong or very like durable. She can't take a lot of hits. But what makes her really dangerous is that she has a weapon called the Dime Thunder or the Dire Thunder. I don't remember what this patch calls it. But it's if you've played Heroes and you've gotten, I mean, especially Reinhardt. Reinhardt is very famous for this. He dominated the game for a very long stretch of time with this weapon. It's just a brave tome, which are actually they're very rare in most games. There's almost none. There's like a couple in Awakening, like some of the secret items have brave effects. I think there might be like a regular brave dark tome, But for the most part, it's pretty rare to see a brave tome, and generally your resistance is going to be pretty low. So you might be able to take one good magic hit from Olwen, but not two. And both of them also have like independent chances to crit, I think. So you're kind of gonna, the more attacks that you take from her, the worse off you're gonna be. I guess that's pretty much par for the course. But with her especially, it's pretty annoying. Her attendant Fred also joins, and he has a lightning sword, which is it's like the flame sword from earlier in the game, except it does like lightning based damage, which has different effects on the weapon triangle and stuff like that. It's mostly the same thing though. Now Olwen doesn't stick around for very long. She's only around for a few turns. I think it's like 2 turns or something like that. So as long as you can hang on for a little bit, you'll be fine. Like she's not that big of a deal. I'd be more worried about the ballista and the bolting tome and everything. The bolting tome, at least you can bait to run out of uses of bolting. Is only 5. Or maybe it's meteor. It's one of the two. And then the ballista, I don't remember if ballista have a limit in this game. I think they do, but it's like higher than siege tomes. Is like 10 or something or 15. So you're probably not going to stall them out very easily, although it is theoretically possible. I think one of the houses here has a barrier staff. Now the barrier staff works identically to how it works in later games. Usually it gives a boost of 7 resistance, which is the defensive stat for magic. um, in some games it varies. I think some games it gives 5, some games it gives 6, whatever. It's the exact number isn't important. The point is that it makes you stronger against magic. It's basically a pure water or a holy water in staff form. Now, if you recall something I mentioned in an earlier episode, this is really, really broken because in Thracia, resistance and magic are the same stat. In order to give you a boost to your resistance, they also need to give you a boost to your magic. Now, this is great for obvious reasons. First of all, you can like give a magic attacker a boost. I don't believe it can raise your magic value over the cap. So most magic users in this game are going to have 20 magic anyway for the most part, but there are a few instances where it's really good. Like for example, there's a character named Tina who has a unique ability to steal items. Her magic is pretty low, and you need to have higher magic than your opponent to steal from them. But if you use a barrier staff, you can bring her magic up, and make it easier to steal things. That's probably the most common use of it. Although there are others as well. Some magic users take a little bit longer to get to 20 magic, or I guess I guess even if you're at like 19 magic, you still get a little bit of boost out of it, although it's not that much. In previous translations, this was actually called the magic up staff, because they were like, okay, well, it boosts your magic, so calling it the barrier staff maybe doesn't make sense anymore because it's like part offensive, part defensive. So we'll just call it the magic up staff. I believe in this patch they've changed it back to barrier just to be more in line with the rest of the series. So if nothing else, you absolutely want to make sure you get your hands on that. I don't remember what the other house gives. I think it might be like a master seal or something, which is also very good. But the magic up staff or the barrier staff is phenomenal. All right, now the real show stealer in this chapter is a little friend. I don't even know if he's a mini boss. I don't remember if he has a portrait or a name or anything like that. He is a wyvern rider, and what's interesting about him is that he has a movement star. This is something I touched on way back, in I think episode 1, and then again in whatever chapter Avo gets turned into stone. I mentioned that movement stars are an okay mechanic, um, but the reason I didn't like them is because sometimes enemies have them. And an enemy proccing a movement star is really, really, really annoying. And this is I believe, our first instance of seeing an enemy with a movement star. At least one that can actually like use it threateningly. Some bosses might have had movement stars, which doesn't really matter. As long as you're playing like relatively safe, you're usually fine against any bosses that may have a movement star. No, but this guy's a real son of a bitch because there's just really nothing you can do about him, right? I mean, he's a wyvern, so he can fly. This is a very terrain heavy map. There's a lot of mountains, there's a lot of forests, there's some water. So your movement is actually extremely restricted. And then your few units that can move freely, I guess really at this point is just Karine. Um, Her movement is restricted more so by the ballista because she can move freely, but if you put her in range of a ballista, she's probably going to die. So you have to be really selective about where you move, whereas this guy can just fly all over the place. Now, it's pretty easy to just bait him, like say, okay, well, I'm out of his range, or if you want to like bait him with one character and you don't want him in range of the other characters, it's really easy to just space that out. But with a movement star, there's a 5% chance that his movement just gets doubled for one turn, which is basically, first of all, obviously, like nothing can really get out of his way with how heavily your movement is restricted. If he just has 18 movement, if he just had 18 movement, it would be enough of a hassle to like stay away from him, space properly, make sure that no one gets hurt by him. That would already be a pain in the ass. But at least you could plan around that, right? Like if a guy showed up and it was just a wyvern rider with, I don't think it's 18. It's like, what's their, well, maybe it is 18. What's their movement in this game? I think it's 9, or 8, maybe. Something like that. I don't think it's. I think it's like. I think it's 8. So if a wyvern rider just showed up with 16 movement, that would be a pain in the ass. You'd really have to think about how you spaced away from him. But at least you could plan for that, right? You can't really plan around the 5% chance that he's going to proc a movement star. I mean, you can, I guess, but it's really, really annoying. First of all, you might not even notice that he has a movement star. It's not like the game draws attention to it. And I don't think you should be reasonably expected to check every enemy stat screen to see if they have a movement star, especially since like most of them don't. So for 90% of them, you just be wasting your time. Or 99% of them, you just be wasting your time. So if you want to ensure that you're safe, you need to have someone there to bait his attack within 9 movement, because you can't guarantee that he'll get a movement star. And then everyone else has to be further than 16 tiles away, so that if he does proc a movement star, you'll still be safe. That's just like pointlessly restrictive, and almost certainly no one's actually going to play that way. It's not fun to play that way, especially if you want to try to like get the thieves or kill the ballista before they start chunking your units. It's just not fun. It's just really not a good time. I don't enjoy it. Movement stars are a mistake, and I do not like them. It's like what benefit do they add? They're like, oh hey, a nice little bonus on my turn. I might be able to move again, but then the trade off is just sometimes you just get absolutely fucking screwed. For no good reason, and it's I don't like it. It's annoying. It's not a huge deal. It's not going to affect everybody. If you get through this map in one attempt, it took me like a shit ton for some reason. If you get through this map in one attempt, then you will. No, it wasn't this map. Next map took me a shit ton of attempts. This one only took me like 2 or 3, I think. Um, but if you make it through in just one go, you're not gonna have to worry about it. He's gonna have like 1 or 2 chances to proc it, and it's probably not gonna happen, and you'll be fine. But if you're whatever reason, you're attempting this map multiple times, maybe you had to reset a couple times. Um, every time you replay this map, he's gonna have a chance, and eventually he's gonna get it, and it's gonna be the cause of one of your units dying, and it's just not fun. Such a random chance of getting fucked over. At least you can plan for like a 5% chance to get crit or something. There's usually some kind of recourse you have for that. I don't know. I'm gonna spend all day ranting about this if I don't stop now, so I'm going to. But I just don't like it. It's annoying. And the last thing you have to worry about this map is the boss. Now, I frankly do not remember why I made note of the boss here. You don't get a paralog for capturing him or anything. Oh, you know what it was? He has some good items that you can steal. I think he has like a master seal or something that you can steal away. But then he also has good weapons. So capturing him is a pain. I don't think I actually managed to do it because I crit or something. But if you can manage it, you get like I think it's like a master axe, which is something really cool. Here, let me just check. Let me pull up his wiki page. Okay, so the Draco Knight guy does have data. He has a portrait, and his name is Tobolza. So that's great. Yeah, so the boss has a master seal, which is pretty whatever. But then he has a great bow, a horse slayer, and a great lance. I don't remember what a great lance does. Is that just like his is that a master lance or is that a so the first in the first three results of FE5 chapter 10, there's a Reddit post that says chapter 10 sucks so much I drop all my Thracia runs, which is unfathomably based. No, okay, it's just a good lance. See, yeah. Yeah, okay. I remember I wanted to capture him for some reason. I think it might have been the Rider's Bane. Like Rider's Banes can be pretty useful. So I think that's why I wanted it, but I wasn't able to do it. The night proof, you can just get that off of him with what's his face, Lithis, or I guess Lara. I don't think they have weight, so you can probably just steal it from him, from her too. Yeah. So pretty straightforward map. Annoying. I don't like it, but it's not my least favorite map or anything. It's probably my least no neck 11X is probably my least favorite map from this episode, but we'll get there. Pretty short wrap up on this one as well. All they say is I think August says, or maybe it's Duke Dorius, says to Leaf, yeah, um, they saw Olwen during the fight and she did manage to escape. She can't be killed, so she always escapes. Like even if you beat her in combat, she just runs away. They noticed her during the fight. They pieced together that she was probably some kind of scout, and that she is most likely on her way to uh, the fort that they're about to attack, called Fort Dundrum, and that the fort is going to be given advanced notice of their arrival, which is very bad. Fort Dundrum is already so difficult to siege already, and with prior warning, it's more or less impossible, like a Herculean task to actually manage this. They briefly discuss if it's worth it to like avoid the fort and go around, but they decide that no, if they don't go straight through the fort, they're just not going to make it in time. So it's better to just risk it and go for the fort anyway, even if it's going to be quite a difficult battle. And with that resolved, the chapter ends. It's fine. I don't really have much to say about it. It's I don't like it very much, but I don't dislike it either. Is fine. It could be better, could be worse. I do think that some things about it are cool. I always like it when there's an anti-turtling incentive, in the form of these thieves. There's some good opportunities to train your weaker units, but then there's also shit I really don't like. The ballista are annoying, and the wyvern is such a piece of shit, and I hate him. It's fine. Nothing really to write home about. All right, now this next map is going to be a lot of fun to talk about because I had a very, very unique experience here, more so than any other map so far. The next chapter is chapter 11, which is called Fort Dundrum. As discussed at the end of last chapter, they're aware about Leaf and his approaching army. Leaf is aware that they're aware of Leaf and his approaching army, so everyone's kind of aware of everything. They say at the start of the chapter that this was I mean, at this point, before now, they were mostly just playing defense, right? Like they broke Leaf out of jail. They were going through army bases and stuff like that. But for the most part, they were kind of just like either fighting bandits or trying to escape outside of Empire controlled territory, as opposed to breaking into it. Now they have pretty much fully begun their invasion of Empire occupied Thracia. So as I'm reading these notes, I'm realizing that I can't get away with not looking at the script anymore, because I really just don't remember any of this shit. So, oh yes, okay, I remember. So before we see Leaf at all, we see Olwen. Olwen is talking with Kempf, and she asks Kempf, "Hey, I want to go take reinforcements to the last area because I like the commander there. We don't want him to die, so we're gonna go take reinforcements to go and help him." Kempf says, "No, you're not gonna do that. And his logic for it is sound, in my opinion, at least. Um, he says that like the guy is probably already dead, and they've probably already captured the fort or the valley or whatever it is. And leaving now would just weaken their defenses, so they need to spend their time and their energy starting the process of getting more fortified, hunkering down in their fort. But it's clear he has an ulterior motive behind it, right? He has. It's been established at this point that he does not like Olwen. He treats Olwen poorly, and even though his reasoning makes sense, he's also like a dick about it, right? Like he's an asshole. He insults Olwen, which she doesn't care really. She kind of takes it on the chin. But then he takes a dig at her brother Reinhardt, and that's what really grinds her gears. That's what gets her going. And she retaliate. I think she actually even draws her weapon on Kempf, with the intent of hurting him. She does stop herself before she does anything, but Kempf has, he it's suggested later that he did this on purpose. He tried to bait her to get a rise out of her, which would then allow him to lock her up and execute her for treason. That's exactly what he plans to do. So as soon as she draws her weapon, he's like, "Nope, too late, can't take it back," and throws her in jail, basically within the fort, in the dungeons. I guess is what they would be. Fred is Owen's like personal attendant, so he's like very upset about this. And Kempf basically tells him to shut up and go fight, and he begrudgingly agrees. Is this the chapter? Yeah, this is where the old translation patch had a lot of fun with this chapter. For one thing, we'll see the other like really big one later. I'm probably gonna name the episode after it. But for now, the one thing I do want to draw attention to is Kempf. What does he do? After he locks her up and she's kind of taken away, he kind of scoffs to himself and then proceeds to call Olwen a stupid bitch, um, which is, I mean, like, that's vulgar, obviously, and not funny in the sense of like the wording, but it's just so much more profane than this series has ever really gone for, at least in any official translations. It's been pretty tame. I mean, there's been some swears. Obviously, there's like "damn" and I think they might throw in a bastard every now and again. Although usually it's a dastard um, instead of bastard. There's a couple hells, for the most part, but they're like words. Obviously, like shit, fuck. They don't go for. And then they usually stray away from bitch. I've noticed they don't usually go for bitch. Um, at least from my experience. I don't. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but at least in the more recent like modern translations, official translations, they don't usually go for that level of profanity. So it's just funny to see like a fan translation just say stupid bitch like that, drop it casually like it ain't no thing. My point is that it's just funny. I spent a lot more time on this gag than I thought I was going to, and they've taken it out of this translation, so this is a bit more in line with what I would expect from like the real intended Japanese meaning of the words. So now the chapter starts. It's pretty annoying to like get in the fort, right? You kind of gotta funnel your way in. Inside the fort, you'll notice that there's not really a whole lot going on. There's very few enemies. There's like a bunch of armor knights in there. There's some myrmidons or whatever in the castle. I think a couple mages running around. And then Kempf himself is a mage knight, so and he's there. So it's pretty light on enemies, and if you're playing blind, you might be tempted to kind of like go in. There is a guide in chapter attached to this, and the requirement is basically just beating the chapter fast. I think you have to do it in like less than 25 turns, which isn't a steep requirement or anything like that. But you might be inclined to go kind of quickly. And the problem is that there's a trap being laid here. In fact, I think they mention at the beginning of the chapter they're doing something called like the portcullis trap or something like that. What that basically means is that when Leaf enters, the way it's structured is that there's a straight path leading up, and then you go through a hallway into a courtyard, and then there's another hallway leading into the castle, and from there, it branches into a couple different paths. But once Leaf enters the courtyard, is when the trap is sprung. Anyone else can go in and out of the courtyard freely. You can clear out all the other enemies if you'd like. But if you want, I think it's how does that work with Fred, huh? Because Fred is here. He's an enemy. Um, oh no, yeah. So that's another requirement. Basically, it doesn't matter. I'm toying with hypotheticals. The point is that as soon as Leaf gets into the courtyard, they spring the trap, and the trap is basically they make a bunch of locked doors appear. First of all, there's three below the courtyard and then in the hallway down there, and then there's three above the courtyard in that hallway. So you might be fucked depending on the situation you were in when you got yourself here. You can actually soft lock if you decide to. Uh, I guess it wouldn't be a soft lock if you just didn't bring a thief, because you could just restart the chapter and bring a thief. But that's annoying. No one wants to do that. But you can actually soft lock the game if you don't have enough door keys, and if all your thieves are both your thieves are dead. That's unlikely, but it is possible, and the fact that it's possible is very, very bad game design, in my opinion. So I don't like it, but it is what it is. I hope you don't just get completely fucked. I mean, I don't think most people Iron Man these games anyway, so you're probably going to reset if your thief dies. But if for some reason you decided to leave both your thieves dead, you can just lose the game, and have to restart the entire run, which would be really obnoxious, or at least load a save back when your thief was alive and keep them alive. Yeah, so pretty much that's. Oh yeah, and then the other thing that happens when this trap gets sprung is that some ballista appear, and the ballista are very close to you. They can shoot into the courtyard, but you can't really get at them to kill them, unless you get inside of the castle. And there are actually very, very few tiles that both ballista will not reach. There are a couple tiles in this courtyard where only one ballista will reach. I think there's like one or two where like none of the ballista will reach. It's really obnoxious because these ballista do a pretty good amount of damage, and it's very possible if you're too slow with getting out of the trap, then you might just die. You might just get hit by one too many ballista shots. The ballista can crit, which are, that's incredibly frustrating when that happens. Yeah, and then the last thing that happens is that Leaf is in the courtyard. Fred is also in the courtyard. He's stationed there and will not move until you go into the courtyard with him. And at that point, Leaf and Fred kind of have a conversation. Fred realizes that Leaf ain't so bad, and he kind of is like, "Hey, I don't really want to fight you. I think Kempf is an asshole. Can I just like get out of here? I'll leave you alone." And Leaf's like, "Yeah, sure, take off." So he turns green, and you do need to keep him. There are three guiding requirements. It's not just the turn limit. The turn limit is one of them, but then also the trap needs to be sprung. So if you like warp skip into the castle and kill Kempf that way, that won't work. Or I think there's a way you can finagle it where if you like kill Fred with someone and then have Leaf just like run straight through the courtyard without stopping there. I'm pretty sure that doesn't trigger the trap either. I'm not sure. But yeah, if you do those things, oh yeah, and the third thing is that Fred needs to survive. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but Fred needs to live as a green unit in order to get the guided map. Now Fred will start running down. He won't be able to escape the courtyard unless you unlock all the doors. So you're gonna have to do that pretty quickly. And then he's just gonna get blasted by ballista. I'm pretty sure they two-shot him, so they will always like gang up on him unless they have an opportunity to attack someone else that's like a juicier target. So that's really annoying. I don't. You can keep him alive. I think you can heal green units in this game, if I'm not mistaken. So keeping him alive isn't like too tricky, but he can get crit. And then if they both hit him on the same turn from full health, they just will kill him. So that's really, really fucking obnoxious, and I don't like it whatsoever. But you kind of got to do what you got to do, I guess. And then the rest of the map proceeds pretty normally for most people. You just go up. There's three more doors up there. You got to unlock. So you unlock them. There's some treasure you got to go around. You can kill the ballista if you want to. And then Kempf. Once you go into Kempf's room, you don't actually have to beat him. He's pretty tough. He has like a I think it's Arc Thunder or something like that, whatever it's called in this game. It's not El Thunder. Thoron, that's what it is. He has a Thoron tome that can crit. That's pretty scary. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, it's been so long since I played this. I played these chapters. I'm pretty sure all you need to do is fight him once, and then after that, at the beginning of his next turn, he will run away. and then that will still like count as you having won the chapter and everything. It doesn't get in the way of the guiding requirements. Killing him is not a guiding requirement, thankfully. So yeah, all you have to do is make sure that Fred survives, trigger the trap, and beat the chapter in 25 turns or less, which is not a very strict requirement. Here's the problem. For some reason, when I was playing this chapter, my brain decided to just turn off. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if I was just having a really off day or if there was just something about like my abilities at like I don't consider myself to be bad at Fire Emblem. I've joked about it. I don't think I'm bad at Fire Emblem. I think I'm like okay. I think there's some things I do well and there's some things I don't do well. I think that this chapter might just be very specifically tailored to test the part of your abilities that I struggle with. That's my best guess. The reason I bring this up is because I actually spent so many attempts on this. It was at least a dozen, probably more. I want to say I had to reset at least like 15, closing in on 20 times. It was just not doing it. It was really I most of the time it was because I accidentally put a character in range of more than one ballista, or I forgot to put a door key on somebody. I had to reset because of that. Or I think at one point I got to Kempf and I got crit by him because I did something wrong. I don't know. There's like a whole bunch of shit that went wrong. I was not too happy about. And I really struggled here. I'm not sure what it was. But this chapter took me many, 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 many attempts. Oh yes. So the other quirk of the previous translation, um, which is very well known at this point. I think most people are pretty familiar with it. Is for some fucking reason, I think it was just like a gag by the previous translator, previous fan translator. The Shia patch is what it's referred to as. They put in a gag where when Kempf springs the trap, there's a very brief. It just like flashes across the screen very briefly. Um, it's a blink and you'll miss it thing, where Kempf says, and I quote, "In America." Now, I'm pretty sure that patch came out after. I mean, in America is not like necessarily a reference to anything. When I hear the phrase "in America," I think of Yu-Gi-Oh, the abridged series, and of course the iconic character of Bandit Keith, in his iconic catchphrase "in America," because for some reason they like really made it clear that he had like a U.S. flag headband on. He was blonde. Made a whole yeah. No, for whatever reason, the people, the author of Yu-Gi-Oh, really wanted us to know that he is American. He's also a huge asshole. Which I mean, like, fair enough. Yeah, I'm American. I can get behind that. So little Karibo, maker of Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series, had a whole gag where he would just, apropos of nothing, say "in America," and that's kind of what I assume it's referencing. I'm pretty sure this patch came out after that was a thing. Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series is quite old, so it's pretty likely, I would say. Yeah, that's just a fun little fun fact because people who play Thracia for the first time nowadays just won't know this stuff. Um, because this is a product like it was starting to get phased out around the time that I played Thracia for the first time, which was not that long ago. I played Thracia for the first time, I want to say in 2017 or 2018, in that range. And it was already like I think the Project Exile came out in 2019. Um, I talked about all that in my first episode of this game, but yeah, so if you're playing Thracia for the first time these days, these just aren't things you're gonna know. They're kind of like, it's a little sad in a lot of ways, because it's just there's some things that are just there's some jokes, and some like goofs and some references that are just timeless. Like like there's a lot of great stuff out there that's just I don't think is ever really is not necessarily like a product of its time. You know what I mean? But then you have stuff like this where it's like you had to be there. You had to be there, and people who experience it for the first time in 2022. Although at the rate I'm going, this probably isn't going to be out until fucking 2023. it's just, it's a little bit of a bummer, right? Because I think something that is just faded from the public consciousness, I guess, or I guess not. Nothing about Fire Emblem is public consciousness, but like within the fandom, there it's gonna start to fade out, and eventually there are just gonna be people who don't know about it anymore, which is unfortunate. Sorry, I don't mean to get this deep into the weeds and into the existential philosophy about a fucking Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series reference in a older patch of Thracia 776. This is why I love doing this. This fucking podcast. It's about the Fire Emblem, yeah. Like I like Fire Emblem. I like talking about Fire Emblem, but sometimes it's just nice to just have a platform to say completely ridiculous bullshit and to know that at least some people are gonna hear it other than the demons in my head. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. I shouldn't joke about that stuff. I am in the field of being a mental health professional. I should not be making schizophrenia and psychosis jokes, but here we are. Oh, and then one last note about this chapter is that in the run that actually did end up getting saved, I didn't save state. I was so mad. I wanted to save state so many times, but I resisted the temptation. I did not do it. I did not save state a single fucking time. Um, I think the real test of that is going to be um Xavier. I think if I can make it through Xavier without save states, I can make it through the rest of the series without save states. I think I can do it, but Xavier is going to be the real test of that. I'm pretty sure. In the save that did end up completing the journey and actually successfully beating the chapter, the real MVP is Hicks. Now Hicks I sent in as basically death fodder, because I needed to bait Ballista Fire away from Fred and my other units that I actually cared about. Hicks is just kind of whatever. I think he died in 2 ballista hits. Maybe he lived 2. He's kind of bulky at base. It's like the one thing he has going for him. I'm pretty sure he died in 2. So I had him baiting some Ballista Fire, and he was supposed to die. Like he was not intended to live, and they didn't have like a particularly low hit chance on him. I think they had like, I want to say it was like 56, 57% chance to hit or whatever, so it wasn't like in the 20s. But he just kept dodging over and over and over again, and he actually lived the whole chapter, despite my treating his life with absolutely reckless abandon. um, so I have decided, and this is what I love about Fire Emblem, right? These little like procedural, not procedural, but like these unique stories that are like different from player to player and from playthrough to playthrough. But I've decided that based on this incredible performance, I'm going to use Hicks. I don't care. It's really easy to use whoever you want in this game with no restrictions, because of the scrolls and everything like that. So yeah, Hicks is on the team. Hicks is on the long squad, boys. Let's fucking go. Um, that's gonna be exciting. I do not particularly have an affinity for Hicks. Even after this, it's like, okay, cool, he did a cool thing, but it's just fun, to be able to see something cool happen and be like, damn, that was really cool. It was really badass. I have a fun story about Hicks now. How many? I could probably count on my hands the number of people that have a fun story about Hicks. You know what I mean? It's just little. I don't think anyone's had an experience quite like that, and it's true about a lot of games. It's like one of the best things about video games as a medium and as an art form is that everyone's going to have a slightly different experience. Um, but I think with Fire Emblem, with the variety and like characters you can use, I think it's ripe for this sort of thing. It's great. It's part of the reason I love the series so much. So Hicks is on the team. Yeah, and they've successfully, after you beat Kempf, you seize the throne, and you have successfully captured Fort Dundrum. Now, the Fred surviving makes sense. All right, for why it's a guiding requirement. We'll see. We'll see why at the start of the next chapter. And the time thing makes sense because the excuse they use to get into like the reason that the next guiding chapter takes place is because it takes place in the dungeons of Fort Dundrum, and the justification is basically that they have beaten the fort, they have taken the fort with enough time to spare that they actually decide to go looking in the dungeons to see if there's any like supplies or people that they can free to come help them, whatever it may be. If you take too long, then they decide that they've wasted too much time and they need to move on as quickly as possible. So that part makes sense, and I always like when they try to justify the guiding requirements instead of it being like, oh, you took you saved this guy. Why is that important? I don't know, but the fact that he's alive means you can access the next guidance chapter. They usually do a good amount of work to make it make sense most of the time, with some exceptions. FE7. The third requirement, though, of the trap needing to have been sprung, that one doesn't really track for me. I don't really see why that needs to happen. I guess because if it isn't, then Fred doesn't turn green, which is the reason that he joins you in the first place. I guess that kind of tracks. Yeah, I can see it now, I guess. That one's a little bit more tentative for sure. Okay, and then the last chapter that we're talking about today, only three this time, is chapter 11X, which is called, I hope I pronounced this right, uh, Balustraria. As we established at the end of the last chapter, Kempf has decided to run away to save his own life, and as he's doing so, he orders some of his soldiers to stay behind and basically, pretty transparently tells them, we're going to use you as sacrifices to buy us time. And the soldiers are pretty obviously not on board with this, but Kemp says, well, you have two choices. You could either fight Leaf and actually maybe survive, or I'll just kill you right here and now. So they decide reluctantly to try to fight Leaf and live to fight another day. We cut to Olwen, who, if you remember at the beginning of last chapter, was brought down to the dungeons for insubordination and trying to attack Kempf. Um, and we see her in the cell with some children, and the children kind of talk to her for a little bit, and she finds out that they are citizens of the empire who have been taken from their homes and separated from their families, with seemingly the intention to do them harm. And Owen is kind of caught off guard by this because she apparently had heard rumors that the child hunts were going on, but never really believed them and thought that they were just anti-empire propaganda, which seems a little not right to me. Like, she's the sister of the head knight of one of the core families of the empire. I feel like she probably would have known, but I guess they want to make her seem like not a complete bad guy. They want to give her some level of deniability, I guess, so that they can't be like, hey, you wanted to kill the children. What's up with that? I don't know. It seems a little silly to me. I don't know why they couldn't just have her like know, but then when maybe they could have had her like know what's going on, but then when she actually like sits down in the cell and talks with them, she kind of realizes like, oh shit, this is we've kind of been doing some messed up stuff, huh? I don't know. I think something like that would have been more appropriate, I guess, and make more sense to me, but what do I know? Now, this does actually cast an interesting light on her character because up to this point, it hasn't been made. Actually, it's been made pretty clear at this point that she is very, very, very fond of her brother, Reinhardt, who is, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned this before. It's been a while since I recorded the last couple of chapters, but Reinhardt is the head of the royal guard, I guess, or whatever. He's Ishtar's appointed like primary knight. Ishtar being one of the antagonists from FE4, the daughter and heir to House Frege, basically. Reinhardt is her personal knight in attendant, and Olwen adores him. She didn't actually even stand up to Kempf until Kempf started bad mouthing her brother. She let him bad talk her as much as he wanted, but as soon as he started saying shit about his brother or about her brother, that's when she decided to stand up against him, and that's what got her thrown in jail. But now that she's kind of learning more about this, and she's like, my brother definitely knew about this. There's no way he didn't know that this was going on. So I guess she's like, I have some thinking to do because that's pretty messed up, and I don't know why my brother would let this happen. He's a good guy. This map is kind of separated into two segments, or sections. One of them is where Leaf starts. We'll talk about that in a minute. But then there's a section up north, that's where Olwen is, and Fred enters the map through a stairwell that comes into the upper section where uh, Olwen is. He shows up and he tells her that they're gonna get the hell out of there, and he goes to bust her out. You actually get control of Fred for this section, I think. Um, I don't think you get control of Olwen yet. You can have the two sections combined. There's like a door that separates the two that you can access partway through the map. I'm pretty sure Olwen is no, Olwen's blue. I think Fred and Olwen are both blue. Anyway, at some point you're probably going to want to have Leaf talk to Olwen. I actually don't know if it's necessary to recruit her. I would assume so, but maybe not. Anyway, on Leaf's end of things, oh, I should mention that this is a Fog of War map. The gimmick of this is actually right in the name. Balustraria is a term that refers to, I believe it's in a tactic of war in medieval times was for archers to line up through or in front of holes in walls and shoot arrows through the holes so that they could target people on the other side of walls. To my knowledge, the only game that actually does anything interesting with this concept is FE10, where in that game, some walls will have like you'll be able to tell clearly from like the way they're designed that they have like gaps in them or they're short enough to be shot over, stuff like that. Um, and then some walls will be, they'll be too thick to shoot through, or they won't have any holes or anything like that. And depending on what they look like, that'll inform whether or not you can shoot through them with arrows. Pretty much every other game, as long as the wall is only one tile wide, you can just shoot over it with arrows, which is fine. I don't necessarily think every game needs to pay that level of attention to detail, but it seems like they're kind of like canonizing this concept of like, oh yeah, there's just holes in the wall, which is how archers are able to do that. Um, that begs the question, of course, are there holes in every wall? What about shooting people on the other side of a house? Like what does that look like? But I mean, I wouldn't be asking. These are like supremely nitpicky questions, but I wouldn't be asking them if the game didn't draw direct attention to this idea. I don't know. I just think it's interesting. The gimmick is basically you have a one or two tile wide pathway up. I'm not sure which it is. And then on each side there's walls that people will be shooting you over. They reuse this concept a couple times. The most probably well-known example is Chapter 9 of FE8, which is the one where you recruit. Sorry, Chapter 9 Ephraim route of FE8, where you recruit Amelia. They have that same concept in that map. And then also FE6 Chapter 12 is another one that uses this to pretty good effect, in my opinion. Um, you have to like go through that like zigzaggy hallway with archers and mages shooting you from all directions. It's pretty neat. I like it. Here though, it's just kind of annoying. I mean, there's Fog of War. I never like Fog of War, but I guess at least they're kind of using it for something interesting this time, which is like, oh, what's gonna come from the darkness and shoot you from over the walls? Most of the enemies aren't really that threatening, so it's fine. This is a good opportunity if you have characters who use bows that you want to use to train them up. I'm pretty sure that I gave Selfina some levels here. It's been so long since I played this game, I don't actually remember who I was trying to use. I know Hicks. I know Hicks was I mentioned last chapter, because of his performance in chapter 11, I decided I wanted to try to use him. But anyway, once you get past that segment of the map, it's pretty dull. There is one more notable thing about this map, which is that actually there's a couple things. The boss will shoot siege tomes. He has a bolting tome and a meteor tome, I believe. He has one of each, and he will shoot them from a distance. Eventually, he'll run out of both. After a certain amount of time passes, I don't know if it's based on like his weapons being depleted or like if it's just a turn count thing. At some point, the boss actually decides that he's going to try to make a break for it and run away. So he leaves the throne and actually opens the door to his throne room. Um, and he'll try to escape. At which point you can just go in and seize the throne if you want to, or you can open the door from the outside before it comes to that point if you're able to, if you have a door key or a thief or something. Well, other than that, it's a pretty bog standard map. There are green units here. Each kid corresponds to a specific item, but it doesn't really make sense why you would save one of them and not all of them. They are in danger because at some point the staircase that they're trying to escape from, which is the staircase where Fred came in from, at some point reinforcements are going to start coming from there, so you have to be kind of careful. I actually almost lost a couple of them, or I actually almost lost one of them a couple times. Just that the enemies just kept grabbing them. But in the end, I managed to save all of them, so that's good. And yeah, once you wrap that up, we get a little bit more story. This is actually a pretty interesting part of the story, in my opinion. Um, the siege on Tara is really starting in full swing. At this point, Tara, I believe it's been mentioned a couple times that Tara is the last remaining city in this area, the Master District or whatever you want to call it, that has not been subjugated by the Empire. And at this point, people are starting to see Tara and be like, oh, maybe the Empire isn't as hot shit as we thought. And the Empire can't have that, obviously. So they desperately, desperately want to make an example of Tara by breaking their defenses and taking them over. So at this point, they're really launching their attack full force, and we really got to get there as soon as possible. They are actually so desperate to break Tara that they are bringing in the Gelbenritter, which is sorry, there are fireworks going off in the background. I'm recording this segment of the episode on July 16th. The 4th of July was nearly 2 weeks ago now, and there are still people shooting off fireworks. I really hope that's not picking up in the background, but they're so desperate to break Tara's defenses, actually, that they are bringing in the Gelbenritter, which is the elite guard for House Frege. It's the group that Reinhardt belongs to, and they're kind of like the head honcho knights of House Frege. Now, I'm actually really glad I double checked the script because there was a great moment here that I did not mention in my notes for some reason. But there's a great interaction here between August and Duke Dorius. August, if you remember, is much more callous, much more cunning, and is very pragmatic in his approach. He's a lot more like Soren. I'm pretty sure I used this exact parallel, but it's been a while, so you'll have to forgive me. It's a very very much a Titania Soren dynamic where Titania and Soren in FE9 kind of both serve as tacticians to Ike, and one of them it's kind of like the angel devil on his shoulder kind of thing, right? Where Soren's a lot more pragmatic. He's a lot more like, no nonsense. Whereas Titania is a lot more willing to entertain being less efficient or less, uh, you know, optimal if it means doing the right thing and having heart a little bit, which is where Soren kind of lacks. And I think that game explores the dynamic really interestingly, where it's like Ike needs both, right? Because he can't just have one or the other. That would lead to too much. They would be a group of bleeding hearts who never got anything done, or they would be a group of cold, calculating, manipulative assholes who were just terrible people all the time. So Ike really needs both to kind of balance out his thought process. Um, Thracia kind of does something similar with August and Duke Dorius, except instead of kind of like working in harmony, they're kind of pretty consistently at each other's throats. I think this is not the first time that there's been conflict between the two, but if memory serves, this is definitely the most blatant their conflict has ever been. Because what happens here is that Duke Dorius is talking about the Gelben Ritter, and he's trying. Ostensibly, what he's doing is explaining to Leaf how big of a threat they are. But while he's doing it, he starts to kind of gas them up a little bit. He says like they're such powerful knights. Um, Sir Reinhardt is considered to be, one of the most powerful men in the world. He's considered to be a reincarnation of one of the Crusaders. he's just going off about like how impressive these guys are. And August steps in and is like, these guys are fucking maniacs, dude. Like, why are you talking about them with um such reverence, and I think it kind of comes to a head when Dorius calls Reinhardt a damn fine warrior, are his words, and August kind of takes issue with that. Says he engages in child hunts. He sees Dorius as being kind of just he as a knight. I think we don't know August's backstory yet, but I'm pretty sure he was he's like a commoner. He doesn't really have like a lot of status other than just like being associated with the church. And I think he kind of sees knights as being kind of hopeless. I believe is actually one of his exact words, in the sense that they will he believes that they will value knightly honor and other status and power over just being a decent human being. So when he's Dorius here is affording Reinhardt a level of respect that August feels he does not even remotely deserve, is probably the best way of putting it, and it pisses him off, and they kind of get into a little bit of a heated argument about it. August kind of explains to Dorius. I think Dorius is kind of like unaware of exactly how deep in the rabbit hole Reinhardt really is. So August has to explain it to him and says that like he is basically Julius's like uh lapdog, because if he's Ishtar's lapdog and Ishtar is like one of Julius's most trusted, people that he's with. And at this point it's become pretty clear to August that Julius just is lop tier at this point. Which may or may not be true. It's kind of, depending on your interpretation of the events of FE4. Um, so he says like he's engaging in child hunts. He's basically like working directly under the reincarnation of the most evil god that has ever existed, and he's just kind of a piece of shit. Olwen jumps in and starts kind of like defending Reinhardt, but that scene doesn't really go anywhere, other than honestly maybe slightly out of character to me, is the fact that Olwen introduces herself as Reinhardt's sister, and Leaf is like, "Hey, she wants to come with us. Can she do that?" And August just says, "Yeah, don't worry, it's fine. Don't worry about it." Which seems a little out of character for me. I feel like Reinhardt would be a lot more, or not Reinhardt, August would be a lot more cagey about it. But whatever. And that's the end of chapter 11X. It's all right. I think it's probably the best guiding chapter so far, unless I'm forgetting one. There's like what 2X, 4X. There wasn't a 6X, but there was an 8X, and that's it, right? Yeah. So I think it's definitely the best, but the best so far, at least because it has interesting gimmicks other than the fog of war. And the fog of war isn't like that bad in this one. It doesn't like ruin anything. Um, it can be a little frustrating maybe, but not a huge deal. Not like 2X where you have to like wander around in the fog like a fucking headless chicken. Hello. I don't know where I'm gonna put this, but this is I'm recording this after the rest of the episode. I'm gonna have to find a good place to plop this down in the middle of chapter 11X, because I forgot to talk about our recruitable characters in this one, Olwen and Fred. You can tell how out of practice I am with this, because that's like one of the most important things, and I just completely forgot about it. Okay, so let's start with Olwen, I guess. Olwen is, as a character, she's okay. I don't love her, but I don't hate her either. I think she's an interesting concept. I think that this idea of a character who is like, completely fawns over her brother, really idolizes him, is suddenly forced to confront that maybe he's kind of not a great guy. That's great. That's awesome. I do wish that they had been a little bit less eager to absolve her of all responsibility. I think it could have been interesting if maybe she had kind of like known a little bit, but maybe like turned a blind eye or was in denial about it or whatever. Instead, it really does come across. Maybe that's the implication, right? Maybe that's what we're supposed to infer. But at least for my my mileage, it seemed like it was really kind of absolving her of guilt and saying like, no, she really had no idea that this was going on. So I guess that was kind of a bummer. But otherwise, I think she's okay. In terms of gameplay, she is a mage knight, which is a mounted magic using class. I do not believe we have any others who fit that description right now. And she's okay. I mean, like it's in terms of combat, like she's not excellent, right? She's pretty frail. She's made of wet tissue paper. And she doesn't do that much damage, but you can get her stats up pretty easily. What makes her kind of stand out above the rest of the group is that she does have a personal weapon, a tome called Dire Thunder or Dime Thunder. It kind of depends on the translation. I'm pretty sure in Heroes it is translated as Dire Thunder, and it is her personal weapon. Reinhardt can also use it, I believe, although that might be Heroes poisoning getting to me. But I believe he can also use it. The problem is that Reinhardt is not playable in this game. But if he were, he could use Dire Thunder. What Dire Thunder is, if you're not familiar, is that it is essentially a brave tome. It is a tome that hits twice per round of combat, just like all the other brave weapons that we've gotten up to this point, which I believe is all of them except the brave bow. I think the brave bow comes in chapter 13. Yeah, that's really all there is to say about Olwen. She she has a very interesting dynamic. Uh, there is and we'll get to this when we talk about this character in a later episode. There is a character that we can recruit later on in the game. His name is Ilios or Arios, and his recruitment requirement is that Olwen must be dead. She has to be gone. She can't be captured. She can't be she can't be alive in some other way. She has to be either dead or you had to have not recruited her in the first place. This is really weird and like hyper specific. I don't know why they did it like this. I mean, I don't remember his character very well. I'm pretty sure he's like a commoner who really dislikes the nobility. So I think that but you have other members of nobility in your group. I don't know why Olwen specifically. I'm sure it'll make more sense when we actually get to him, but uh, basically, your question that you have to ask yourself is, do you want Olwen or do you want Ilios? Because you're gonna have to choose one or the other, unless you are going B route. Now we'll talk about what exactly that means at a later point. But Ilios is only on A route. He is an A route exclusive character, and he does not show up in B route. I don't think. I will double check because now I'm starting to second guess myself. Yep, he is only in A route. Now, if you choose to go B route, he is not recruitable at all. So you will have to choose Olwen. You won't get another choice in the matter. For my part, I am playing both routes because I want to show off every map. My plan is to make a save state before the route split happens, and then I'm going to play out one side, and then I'm going to play out the other side, and then I'm going to choose which side I decide to follow through with. I'm probably not always going to choose immediately, like before the route split. I might have to like see like, oh, did my characters get good level ups in one route but not the other one? Did I get a good item? Whatever it may be. However, in this instance, I think I already know what I'm going to do, which is I'm going to continue from B route because there's a B route exclusive character that I really want to use. Yeah, I mean that's it. That pretty much explains it. So I don't have a choice at all. In terms of who is better between him and Olwen, I mean I think it's probably Ilios, if I'm being honest. He cannot use Dire Thunder, which is a big advantage that Olwen has. It's a big point in her column. But whereas Olwen is pretty frail, and in fact she's actually, if memory serves, really really frail. Ilios is actually quite bulky, so he can take a lot more punishment and is not basically locked into being a player phase nuke, which is what Olwen is. So take all these things into consideration. If you're playing through B route, you it doesn't have to matter anyway. You're not you know you maybe you won't have to care. But if you are playing through A route, keep it in mind. You know you're gonna wanna decide that sooner rather than later, so you can just kill her off, I guess. It's also worth noting that like Olwen has Reinhardt. Reinhardt is a character that shows up later in the game, and if you have Olwen, you can have like some exclusive conversations with her. I don't know if Ilios has any exclusive conversations. I'm not sure, but like obviously Olwen is a lot more relevant to the story, so it would make the most sense if you're interested in that side of things to pick Olwen over Ilios or to just go B route, one or the other. Either way, even if I do end up deciding to go A route, I'm probably going to keep Owen just because I think I've played this game like I think I before this I played it twice, and I'm pretty sure I picked Ilios both times. I definitely went A route both times. I've not gone B route yet in my life, so the playing those chapters for this podcast will actually be the first time I've ever played those chapters. But I'm pretty sure I picked Ilios both times. So anyway, moving on to Fred. I like Fred a lot actually, and mostly just because like I really like the loyal, the steadfast loyal knight archetype. I'm a fan of that. I think it's a cool concept. I mean, obviously, overdone is the understatement of the century, right? It's in like a lot of different forms of media, especially centered around like medieval culture. But I don't know. I like it. Sue me. One of my favorite characters in the series is Seth from Fire Emblem 8, and he's kind of like he fits into the same archetype. So I think Fred. I mean, Fred's not one of my favorite characters in the series or anything like that, but he's good. I like him. In terms of gameplay, he's fine. It's hard. Again, it's hard to really like quantify how good a character is when pretty much everyone's gonna be pretty serviceable at combat. He's on a horse. He's a paladin, which is I believe is the promoted version of what Carrion turns into, and he's yeah, I mean he's pretty good. He comes with a thunder sword, which boosts his I believe it's his skill by 10 or something like that. Let me check. Maybe it's probably not. It's like 5, I think. Oh, he's called Alfred in this patch. That's why I was looking around for him. I was like, where is he? I have the save booted up from the for the next chapter. Yeah, it's called the Bolt Sword, and it boosts his skill by 5. But it is not locked to him. It does not seem like. Um, but he joins with A swords and C lances, so he can actually see some use outside of like even if you have to dismount him. But his stats aren't particularly good, so but your mileage may vary. Maybe you won't get that much use out of him. All right, that's it. I hope that I was able to make this not super jarring and enjoy the rest of the episode. All right, so I guess it's time for the map gauntlet, huh? Um, this is a tricky one. Not really because there are multiple contenders for the best one. Just because they're all bad. Um, I don't really know. I don't like any of these. Is the problem? 10, 11, and 11X just aren't. None of them are doing it for me. Um, and it doesn't help that it's been so long since I've actually played them. I guess like weirdly enough. I know I said in the past that a Fog of War map would never be a contender for the best map of the episode, but honestly, I'm kind of considering 11X. It's not really going to matter as we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I mean, chapter 10 and 11 have the ballista, and the ballista just really annoy me in this game. I think in most games they're like they're used sparingly enough where it's like it's usually not that big of a problem. There's usually only like a couple. You can take them out pretty easily. And they're a threat if you're not like keeping them in mind, but they're not too hard to plan around. I feel like in this game they're just really fucking obnoxious, or at least the way that they use them are. Chapter 10 just it's definitely not chapter 10. It's got to be either 11 or 11X, and I can't see 11 winning because it's just so bad. So yeah, I got to give it to 11X, which is really weird. And it just kind of goes to show I think how really mediocre these maps are. Not bad, I guess. They're kind of annoying. They're not on the same level as like the Master chapters, um, where they're either like really, really, really fucking bad or just boring. They're frustrating, but it's fine, I guess. At least they have like interesting set pieces or cool ideas that are being implemented in them. I think I think the trap that they spring in the in chapter 11 is one of the most creative ideas in the game so far. And honestly, probably the whole series. I just think it's a really neat idea. I think the execution leaves a lot to be desired, but I can appreciate the creativity behind what they were trying to do. And I think I've said this before, but I think that's really the biggest takeaway about Kaga as a game designer is that he's always trying cool, weird shit that pushes the envelope. And does it always work? No, absolutely not. But he's trying, damn it, and it's really cool, and I like it. But chapter 11 was just too frustrating for me to consider it for the best one of this episode, so I'm gonna have to give it to 11X. Now that doesn't really matter because it's gonna lose to the one that is our standing champion, which is currently chapter 9. Now I've had a long time to think about this, guys. I had a long time, and the more I thought about it, I really have just been flip flopping back. Um, at the end of the last episode, I was really torn between chapter 3, which was our then reigning champion, versus chapter 9. I think they both excel in different ways. I think they both have really neat ideas behind them, and mostly the argument was chapter 3 is more interesting and has like more side objectives and more anti-turtling incentives, whereas chapter 9 has a better pacing that involves less backtracking and it proceeds in a much better clip. And ultimately I did give it to chapter 9. And ever since then I've kind of like been going back and forth of like, do I like chapter 3 better, do I like chapter 9 better? It's really close. um and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if I did this again before the end of the Thracia episodes. But I have decided to recant. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this. Am I gonna get like sued by somebody? I don't know, maybe. But I've decided to recant and say that once again, Chapter 3 is going to be our reigning champ. Um, Chapter 9 is good. I do like it, but it's just so basic. You know, there's really not that much to it. It has a really bare bones surface idea that's kind of good, but past that, it's not great. It's pretty forgettable. Chapter 3, though, despite it can be a little bit duller at times, is ultimately I think a more entertaining and memorable map because I still, I have fond memories of chapter 3, of playing through it and having a good time. Whereas chapter 9 is kind of it's pretty much a point A to point B affair with just a little bit thrown in to kind of spice things up. So I think chapter 3 is gonna stay the reigning champ for a while yet, especially going into the next episode, which is gonna be 12, 12X, and 13. 13's all right. 13's pretty good. So we'll have to see if that tops chapter 3, but we'll see. But yeah, chapter 3 definitely beats out chapter 11X. So chapter 3 is still winning. And we'll see if maybe next episode changes that. I probably said next week at some point in that spiel because I can't shake that habit for some goddamn reason. I have not put out an episode in. By the time this one goes up, it'll probably be close to a full year, and I'm still saying I'm still talking like this is a weekly affair. It's very funny. So but anyway, um, I'm thinking that that this episode is going to go up. I mean I don't know when it's going to go up. I have to edit it and everything, and I'm not even done recording. We still have news and other stuff to talk about, but um, I want to upload at least 3 at the same time as a kind of like to make up for lost time. Then it's like, oh, in a way, on average, I kind of only missed 4 months, which is still very long. I think besides, like outside of this one, I think the longest gap in my episode uploads has been about 4 months. So yeah, I'm gonna try to get 3 episodes out at the same time which would get us up to chapter 13 next episode, and then the one after that would get us up to 14, 14X, and 15. Um, and then yep, that's actually really great because that'll take us right up to the route split, which is great, and I'm gonna have stuff to say about that at the end of that episode. But for now, I don't know when this is going up, but I am almost positive that by the time you are hearing this, by the time you are hearing me say these words, there will be two more episodes up, and we will be up to chapter 15 of having just completed chapter 15 of Thracia 776. So all right. With that out of the way, let's talk about news. I don't really want to get because usually what these boil down to is like, oh, there's new merch or there's like an art book or like some kind of cool fan project going on. And I'm sure that there is plenty of that, right? But at the time I'm recording this, the big thing, of course, is the new Fire Emblem game. And this is at the time I'm recording this, at least, there has not been any new information about a main series Fire Emblem game. We're still waiting on that. But at just recently, I believe a couple weeks ago now, we got Fire Emblem Warriors Three Hopes, which is the Fire Emblem Three Houses themed sequel to Fire Emblem Warriors. Now, I haven't played the game yet myself. I do plan to. I don't know exactly when I'll get around to it, but I did not play the first Warriors game, more or less on principle because I thought that I thought they handled like the PR of the game really badly. I really wanted to see more characters from the games that I liked in this series being represented, and I mean, clearly they didn't do that because of money and because they wanted to get more popular, recognizable characters in, which I'm okay with. I think that that's fine and reasonable, and they need to make money, right? I get that. But I wish that they had just said that, you know. They just been like, yeah, we wanted to include the most recognizable characters that are gonna appeal to the most amount of people. I think that that would have been way more palatable to me than what we actually got, which is there would be too many swords or whatever the fuck they said, which is just so fucking stupid. And this is like the deadest horse of all time. You know, I'm kicking it, and it's not moving. It has not moved for quite a few years now. But that is basically the reason I skipped out on the first one. I thought that the way that they handled that was just not very good, and so, but it seemed all right. You know, I also don't think that the reuse of move sets was very great. I didn't like that at all, and I don't know if there's any of that in this one. I actually know very little about the game at the time I'm recording this. So at some point I am going to get around to playing it. It probably won't be by the time these episodes go up. It'll probably be sometime in the future, in the next like couple years probably. I doubt I would play it even before the next main series Fire Emblem game comes out. I'm not really sure. I have a lot of games on my backlog, and I don't think that this is going to be very high on the priority list, but it's somewhere on there. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, usually I would talk about these uh fan projects or merch things or whatever. There actually off the top of my head, I do know that they've released a few figurines that are pretty cool. Although none of them are for my favorite character in Three Houses, which is it's not Ignatz. I was gonna say Ignatz. Ignatz is more um, like I have a closer association with Ignatz with like my friends and stuff. Kind of adopted Ignatz into my persona, um, like my online persona. But my favorite character in Three Houses is the Do. So if we ever get I don't think we got a Do. We got Dimitri and Felix were the Blue Lions guys, I think. And then we got we're getting Claude and Lysithea, I think, for Golden Deer, and then the Black Eagles ones I don't believe have been announced yet, but I mean obviously Edelgard's going to be one of them. If I had to guess, probably whoever the most popular of the Black Eagles is, which I would assume is either Bernadetta or Petra would be my guess. Could be wrong, not sure. Oh no, I'm on crack. It's gonna be Dorothea. What am I fucking talking about? um, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. But I highly encourage you, if you are not very familiar, if you're listening to this right now, you're probably pretty entrenched in the Fire Emblem fan base, so you know what Serenus Forest is. But in the case you don't, Serenus Forest is a forum, a Fire Emblem themed forum that puts out news about like merch and events and things like that. And that's where I always go there at the end of every episode that I'm recording to kind of see like what the scene is and see if there's anything new and cool to talk about. And I'm sure that there's been plenty. You know, in the time since I put out the last episode, we got the announcement for the new game, and also the game came out, and it's actually been a little while since the game came out. So that's the big one. Um, in terms of like my personal life, a fucking lot has happened. I've finished school more or less. I have a little bit more to go. It's kind of complicated, but I'm basically done, which means I am like 95% there to having a master's degree in clinical, no, not clinical psychology. What do they call it? Counseling psychology. And yeah, that's pretty exciting. I have moved into an apartment, which is actually the first time I'm living uh, in an apartment. And, like my first time living away from home, not at a college dorm, basically. So that's been a pretty interesting experience. You can just skip all this bullshit. Like the episode's over. If you don't want to hear me talk about the shit I got going on in my personal life, um, I can you could just skip to the next episode or whatever you want to do. But so that's been pretty interesting. I like it here. Um, and it's I mean, I wouldn't call it the best area in the world, but it's certainly not bad. There are definitely worse. I could be in downtown Worcester, but I'm not in downtown Worcester. No offense if you live in downtown Worcester. But I think if you do live in downtown Worcester, you probably know what I'm talking about. I love Worcester. Worcester is a great city. Worcester, Massachusetts is a great city. I lived there for when I was in college for a while. And I liked it a lot. But I don't think I would want to live there long term, especially in downtown because that's where I was. And it was spooky at times. But I live. I'm not gonna say where I live. But I live still in Massachusetts, and it's I live in a different town. Um, but it's nice-ish here. You know, the rent's not bad in terms of like media I've been consuming, um, there's been a lot. I've played quite a few games. I've watched quite a bit of anime. And I might mention some of those at the end of next episode. But I guess the biggest one uh is that between putting out last episode and and recording this one, I've actually read all of One Piece. I knew nothing about One Piece. I think I might have actually started it a little bit like before I put out the last episode, but I didn't get very far. So I picked it back up. I actually dropped it for a while because I was getting kind of bored. This was around like the beginning of the Grand Line. This is when they were doing like Little Garden, Reverse Mountain, Drum Island. Drum Island specifically is where I dropped it. Um, so I picked it back up and I just read the whole thing and I liked it. It's a good manga. One of my favorites actually. It's uh I have read I haven't read. I watched Naruto before. And that's the other I mean I've watched a lot of anime, but that's like like probably the only other like big like super anime that like everyone knows that that I could say is like competing with it. I guess Full Metal Alchemist counts. I think most people know Full Metal Alchemist, even if you're like an anime normie. And Full Metal Alchemist is way better than either of them. So, um, don't at me, but yeah, both. I stand Full Metal Alchemist 2003. I do. I love Brotherhood too. I love Brotherhood probably more if I'm being honest, but I think O3 is really fucking good and it does not get the credit it deserves. Um, but yeah.
I think I had played Eye of the Somnium Files by the time the last episode came out, and I'm gonna hop on the sequel soon. The sequel just came out. I'm gonna hop on that. Anything else? I'm just looking at my shelf. Oh, I finished the Trails in the Sky trilogy. I gotta hop on the next section of those games, which is Crosvel. But other than that, yeah, I mean those are pretty much the big games that I've been playing. Um, for the most part, I've really only played two games since fucking October of last year. I've been playing a lot of. I've been doing a lot of Pokemon Nuzlocks. That's what it was. I played a shit ton of Nuzlocks. Um, I hardcore Nuzlocked the entire series, more or less. No, not. It's like half the series, and I got to the point where I was able to do platinum in one attempt. Fair number of deaths, but one attempt. And when I got to that point, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try my favorite Pokemon game, which is Renegade Platinum, which is a ROM hack, much harder than vanilla Pokemon games, but still not that hard compared to some of the other ROM hacks out there. And I did it. I completed it, and it took me a while. I had to. It took me, I believe, 7 attempts, and even the seventh attempt, I had to like fudge a little bit. I think I gave myself a mulligan, where I wiped at one point, but I was like, that was complete bullshit. My luck was such complete garbage that I'm gonna mulligan myself and do the fight again. So yeah, if you count that as me not having beaten it, then whatever. I guess that's fair enough. Okay. Though at this rate, the fucking episode's gonna be like 2 hours long, so I'm gonna cut it off here. Maybe I'll talk about some of the anime I watched, um, over the time I've been gone next time. Oh wait, did oh shit, this came out in wow, this is 6 months ago. Feels like longer than that. I played Legends Arceus, which I fucking loved, by the way. I know it's considered a main series game for some reason, which I don't consider it that at all personally. And I definitely consider it a spinoff. But it is probably without question my favorite spinoff. Um, so take that as you will if you haven't gotten around to it. Highly recommend. It's a good game. Okay. That's about it for me. And hopefully, if all goes well, you will have two more episodes to listen to after this one. So I'll let you get to that. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. And I'll talk to you all next time. Bye bye.